1997 was the year that gave us the king of the Oscars, Titanic. It was also the year when Jamiroquai was caught in virtual insanity at the Grammys, and John Lithgow stunned everybody by beating Kelsey Grammer at the Emmys. But what about the Game Awards? If you've ever wanted to know what old school games took home the top prizes, then you've definitely come to the right place. Today we're going to recreate Electronic Gaming Monthly's Best and Worst Awards of 1997, featuring more than 30 categories that include Worst Voice Acting, Best Use of Teats, and games that should have stayed in the arcade. So let me cue up the VHS tape and introduce you to the greatest televised award show to never be broadcast. Look out, we're living virtual insanity. So, you want to know about Electronic Gaming Monthly's Best and Worst Awards of 1997, and you've come all this way to interview me about a show I didn't even host. Well, what do you want to know?
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Cyril Lachelle, and I hosted the Best and Worst Awards between 1988 and 1994, followed by 2 more stints in 1998 and 1999. I'm basically the longest-running host the show had, and one of the few that actually remembers what happened. I guess that's why you're here, huh? Or is there something else you wanted?
What do you remember about the 1997 ceremony?
You want to know about 1997, huh? Well, how much time you got? Well, if that's the story you want to hear, then maybe we should start at the beginning. So, as you probably already know, I was originally hired to host the Best and Worst Awards in 1988. That was the first year, and you have to remember that the US National Video Game Team didn't have a budget or even a regular magazine at the time. They had a dream to create the Oscars of gaming, and I think we did a pretty good job, all things considered. I remember Double Dragon and Rampage taking home the top prizes, and everybody seemed excited, only to then have the night ruined by a tragedy none of us could have seen coming. Honestly, I thought we were doomed to be a one-and-done kind of thing, but apparently the ratings were good enough to bring us back the next year. Then we just kept showing up, year after year, whether people liked it or not. That is, until I was fired. Look, it's all kind of a blur now, and there's no question that I let the fame get to my head. I was out partying every night and experimenting with pretty much anything I could find. All because deep down I felt like an imposter. Like this whole thing didn't really exist, I was just playing a role. It felt like I'd been written into a story to be an award show host, and I was starting to lose myself in the process. And instead of getting help, I famously lashed out at the show and the producers. And that was that. Or so I thought. So 1995 was the year when they built that robot and hoped that nobody would notice, right? Yeah, I spent a night in jail after storming the stage, but I don't regret it. I got somebody else to host the next year, Lorne something. I didn't even watch that ceremony, couldn't bring myself to stomach it. But I was there in 1997, which I guess is what you want to talk about today. So, the ceremony started like any other. Everybody looked good, we had all the biggest stars in the audience, and they even hired a young comedian to host the event. Or was it a woman that year? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. The point is that everything was going as planned. The host came out, they did a monologue, and started to announce the winners. Everybody knew how bad 1996 was, so they started with the eye candy in the form of Soul Blade, the winner of Best Intro. Now, you may not remember Soul Blade now, but it was the first Soul Calibur game, which was also known as Soul Edge in the arcades. The cinema was played for the whole theater, and it just blew us all away. Unfortunately, the same was not true about The Crow City of Angels, which took home the prize for Worst Intro. A fun new category they added that year was Best Middle, which went to the incredible Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This was one of the best twists in PlayStation history, tricking gamers into thinking they had beaten the game when they were only halfway through. If you played the game correctly, then you'd be forced to fight through the castle twice, only this time it's upside down. Speaking of twists, you might be surprised to learn that not all of the EGM editors were won over by Final Fantasy VII's ending. That said, it was still awesome enough to win the Best Ending category. I wonder if they'll improve that ending in the remake, assuming the game ever comes out. Anyway, back to the ceremony. I'm pretty sure they moved on to a muddled series of hardware and accessory categories, starting with the winner of Biggest Vaporware, which once again went to Panasonic's M2. It's basically the same reason as 1996, and I'm pretty sure they even played the same B-roll. No big surprise there, I guess. What did shock the EGM editors was the Game Boy, which picked up a surprise win for the brand new Back from the Dead category. Electronic Gaming Monthly was basically ready to leave the Game Boy for dead, but then Nintendo managed to breathe new life into the little system. They shrunk it down and redoubled their efforts with a lot of great software. Hell, Pokemon actually managed to outsell Final Fantasy VII. I think everybody in the audience was shocked. Another thing that was shocking was the winner of the coolest PR goodie, which went to the Resident Evil Squishy Eye keychain given out at E3 that year. Apparently this swag was so much fun that Editor-in-Chief Howard Grossman had his eye erupt all over himself after some highly vigorous squishing. We're still talking about that Resident Evil eye, right? As an audience member, I think I was most excited to get to the audio awards. We had just come off of a year defined by Resident Evil, so I was curious if any of the winners could top that. When it came to Best Voice Acting, EGM was completely won over by Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. The competition was stiff that year, but any game where the main character can fart and then laugh is easily the winner. If more companies would spend a little extra money on voice actors, then we really wouldn't have anything to complain about. Unfortunately, Capcom didn't spend their money wisely, because Mega Man 8 wins for Worst Voice Acting. The EGM editors had a lot of questions about the sequel, with most of them just wondering why Mega Man sounded like a 12-year-old girl. I hate to say it, but Mega Man sounded like a wimp. On the topic of questionable acting choices, Golden Nugget picks up the win for worst use of Adam West. You worshipped him as a kid, laughed at him as a teenager, cringed at some of his bat hijinks as an adult, and now you just feel sorry for him for taking part in Virgin's awful Golden Nugget game. Man, Batman deserved better. And we deserve better than the terrible soundtrack in NASCAR 98, the winner of Worst Music. What's funny is that Electronic Arts has made it a point to let everybody know that Molly Hatchet did the soundtrack for the game. Like they're proud of it or something. Just for the record, Molly Hatchet were good old Southern boys who managed to release 3 platinum-selling albums in a row, and they were also named the 4th best classic rock band of all time by Spin Diddy, whoever they are. EGM, on the other hand, had a fake ninja. Now, if my memory serves me right, the show moved directly into the Character Awards, which felt a little seedier than usual. It all basically started with Tifa Lockhart winning the prize of Hottest Game Babe. The EGM staff couldn't stop drooling over this buxom beauty, noting that she's perfectly proportioned and irresistibly cute. She's both sexy and strong, which isn't how they ended up determining the winner of Hottest Game Hunk, John Madden. Yes, the John Madden from the football games. The John Madden that was in his 60s in 1997 and packing a bit of a gut. Yeah, it's almost as if they weren't taking it as seriously as the Hottest Game Babe category. Speaking of which, EGM added an interesting new category that year called Worst Makeover. This award went to Nikki from Pandemonium, who transformed from a cute alternate chick to a busty redhead who bears a striking resemblance to a young Peg Bundy from Married with Children. And on that topic, Harvest Moon picked up the win for Best Use of Teats, because that's really the maturity level Electronic Gaming Monthly was playing with in 1997. It was as if they were trying to outdo Ultra Game Players or something. How embarrassing. Anyway, you're probably wondering what happened to Lara Croft. Don't worry, she ended up going home with the most overexposed statue. Oh, what a difference a year makes. She went from being the sexiest woman in gaming to an icon that's just about everywhere. She was at trade shows, on magazine covers, all over the news, and even on a video wall during a U2 concert. And that's not even including the 2 games she starred in. Yeah, it's probably a good thing that EGM didn't know about her movie plans in 1997. Laura also picked up the prize for Best Use of Silicon because, you know, the developers clearly used computers, hard drives, circuit boards, and silicon chips to make her sexy body. Wait, no, I remember now. It was the woman hosting. Because this was the point where she finally had enough of the EGM and just quit in the middle of the show. Yeah, it's starting to come back to me now. And then she was replaced by that young comedian. What was his name again? You don't remember? Yeah, that's funny, right? You would think that this sort of thing would be on Wikipedia or something. I tried to do some research last night ahead of this interview and I couldn't find anything about these shows. It's as if they never even existed. Anyway, have we talked about GoldenEye 007 yet? Yeah, we should probably talk about that since this was the biggest game of the year. When it came to the best movie to game category, there was never any doubt that the statue was going to go directly to James Bond. Of all the years I hosted, I doubt I ever saw a more obvious winner. The EGM editors may have gone in thinking that they were just going to get another lame movie game, but it didn't take more than a few minutes before they were proven wrong. If I remember correctly, this wasn't going to be the last award GoldenEye 007 was going to win this year. It was, however, the last award The Crow City of Angels was going to win in 1997. This awful action game was named Worst Movie to Game, giving it a second win for the evening. 1997 was also the year that Acclaim decided to ruin the Fantastic Four with their awful PlayStation brawler. This comic book catastrophe picked up the win for worst use of a good license, or worst use of the thing. They hated that it was a rehash of Final Fight with repetitive gameplay, bad graphics, and very few special moves. It's hard to imagine anybody ruining Fantastic Four more than Hollywood, but here we are. Speaking of which, we need to talk about Virgin Interactive. This veteran game publisher is usually pretty good at marketing, but EGM couldn't figure out what they were thinking with their Nanotek Warrior campaign, the worst print ad of 1997. It's bad enough that Virgin ripped the eyelids off of some helpless gamer for a stupid ad, but did they really need a river of blood pouring from the guy's tear duct? Just no. On the other hand, Final Fantasy VII comes away with the Best Print Ad award, thanks in large part to their single and multi-page spots that focused on the environment and mythology. No, wait, that wasn't the reason. It was this line. If it were available on cartridge, it'd retail for around $1,200. That's a quality swipe at Nintendo. Man, I love the advertising from the 1990s.
Why the big hurry to call collect with 1-800-CALL-ATT? Because from now on, we're giving away a cool prize every hour. Just complete a collect call. Use 1-800-CALL-ATT. Right now, you can instantly win a parka from Columbia Sportswear or an Oxygen snowboard.
Congratulations, you win! I won!
An instant winner every hour from now on. 1-800-CALL-ATT. The only number you need to know to call collect.
Play hard! Study hard! Back-to-back winners! Way to go, Mr. Butterscotch!
You say we should get serious? Get real. Our lives are full of serious stuff. Relationships, statements, commitments, and decisions. We even take our fun seriously, which calls for the most serious protection out there. Secret Ultra Dry. It's pH balanced for our chemistry and keeps us drier than any other kind. So when life gets serious, we're ready. Secret Ultra Dry. Strong enough for them, but with ultra dryness for us. Seriously.
Oh, hey, you're back. I didn't even see you leave. Did you try the scone? Pretty good, right? Okay, where were we? Alright, everybody had just gotten back from the commercial break, and that's where the mood of the ceremony started to shift. I remember it vividly. That comedian came out and joked about the year's terrible games, and that's when we all knew that the evening was gonna take a turn for the worse. It started out negative and just spiraled out of control. What was the first category? God, what was it? It was something innocent, like Best Cure for Insomnia, which went to Tale of the Sun on the PlayStation. This is what you would call an experimental indie game these days, but back in 1997, the EGM editors weren't that charitable. They complained that the game is so slow and uninteresting that even the main character falls asleep, even during a full-out run up a mountainside. Man, there's nothing more therapeutic than having your caveman slide face first down a hill. Speaking of falling face first, that's a pretty good way to describe War Gods on PlayStation and the Nintendo 64. This midway fighter was the winner of Game That Should Have Stayed in the Arcades, and it's easy to see why. The supposedly high-tech 3D attacks feel underdeveloped and clumsy, As if somebody had an idea, but then ran out of time to fully work out the bugs. I don't know what that's like. That's also how EGM felt about Hexen, the game that should have stayed on the PC. The editors just couldn't figure out why anybody would want to play the watered-down port found on the N64 and the PS1. You could almost feel the tension in the room build as the presenters started to talk about FIFA 64, the dubious winner of most disappointing sequel. This was the franchise that helped demonstrate the power of the 3DO, so the EGM editors were understandably disappointed when they saw the Nintendo 64 sequel, which ended up being a big step backwards. And speaking of shit, Parappa the Rapper won for most diarrhea in a game because, well, our paper-thin hero really needs to use the bathroom in a hurry. In the rain or in the snow, you got that funky flow, but now I really have to go. And apparently the place we have to go is back to school, because Carnage Heart was the winner of Game You Need a PhD to Play. EGM knew they were in over their heads the moment they opened the box. The guide that came with it was jammed with graphs and in-depth sections on battle tactics and how to program your mech software. The game eventually won them over, but not before they spent most of the time figuring out how to play the damn thing. I suspect most of them gave up on it and just went back to Final Fantasy VII, the winner of Most Hype for a Game. Yeah, EGM was aware that they had gone a little overboard when hyping the biggest game of 1997. And they weren't the only ones, because everybody was guilty of spending 2 years telling everybody that it was going to be the best game ever. Sure, it's good, but is it that good? I don't know, but that's when I remember everything taking a dark turn. Literally. Terrible scheduling forced Electronic Gaming Monthly to spend too much time on bad games, and there was a real sense of negativity in the room. I don't know if that's the reason or not, but then the lights went out. Just like complete darkness. None of us knew what was going on. And then they came back up, and things were different. The new host had a sinister voice and laughed after every award. I remember him having glowing eyes, but that can't be right. Anyway, the important part is that Castlevania Symphony of the Night won Best Sequel, and those of us that were left in the auditorium were ecstatic. In a year when Final Fantasy VII was the game on everybody's tongue, I was just happy to see Alucard's hardship rewarded. I was also happy to see Rare's work finally honored. The UK-based developer picked up a statue for Most Promising Game Company, an award that just 1 year earlier had gone to Capcom. Rare was on a roll, thanks in large part to GoldenEye and Diddy Kong Racing. But EGM was looking ahead, already drooling over Banjo-Kazooie and the game that would eventually become Conker's Bad Fur Day. Similarly, EGM honored Acclaim as the most improved company in the category called the Best 180-Degree Turnaround. You have to remember that this was the company best known for shoveling licensed crap. So everybody was impressed when they started pumping out genuine bangers like Xtreme-G, Turok, and Forsaken. Though, just to be clear, none of them were as addictive as GoldenEye 007, which not only took home the prize for most addictive game, but also the biggest reason for missed deadlines. Granted, those two awards go hand in hand, but there's no denying the greatness of GoldenEye's multiplayer mode. And it wasn't just the 4-player stuff that kept EGM busy, but also the lengthy story that had different missions and objectives depending on the difficulty. It was the game that kept on giving in 1997. And I guess that brings us to the final award, which should have been the Game of the Year, but by that point EGM had stopped doing that. Instead, we got the game most bought by the EGM staff, which went to Mario Kart 64. Believe it or not, this was the first Mario Kart game to win an EGM award. Of course, they undercut their argument by saying that it wasn't quite as good as the original, but it was the game that everybody in the office bought, so that's worth something. Apparently, GoldenEye 007 was the runner-up. You know, it would have been nice to see how far ahead Mario Kart was, and if a blue turtle shell would have been able to make up the difference. Guys, I honestly don't remember much after that. There was something about half the audience getting sucked into a giant vortex, but I'm gonna level with you. It's all just a blur. I mean, this was, 21 years ago? I had been partying really hard, so there's a real chance that none of what I just remembered is completely accurate. I want to say that it was around this time that Electronic Gaming Monthly changed the name to The Good, the Bad, and the Silly, But the show itself kept the same name for continuity, right? Is that right? I don't know. Funny how you got me to go through an award show I didn't even host.
Actually, we were here to get your thoughts on the 1997 Oscars. We're not sure the show you're describing is even real.
Oh, well, the Oscars were a shit show that year. I mean, the English Patient won over Fargo, and I'm still a little salty about that, though I did like seeing Cuba Gooding Jr. win. Hey, guys, I hate to do this to you, but I'm gonna have to cut this short. I have a hacky sack class to teach in about an hour, and I have to swing home to get my Birkenstocks. Thanks for, whatever this was. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Electronic Gaming Monthly's Best and Worst Award Show. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that the final 2 episodes will be going live next Tuesday and Friday. So here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite game from 1997? This was a big year for gaming, so I can't wait to see your picks in the comments below. So, I want to say just right off the bat here that this was supposed to go live on Friday, but my little pocket of the United States seems to be stuck in the middle of several pretty serious storms. The high winds and trees falling knocked the power out, so this episode got delayed a little bit. We should be back to our regular schedule next week, so in the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,